Stagnation is death.
Huh?
That is a pretty dramatic way to open an economics paper, isn't it?
It really is. It sounds more like a line from a disaster movie.
Right. Usually you get a chart or, a dry definition of supply and demand. This one just comes out swinging.
It does, but the author of the piece we're looking at today, The Architecture of Economic Vitality, they're not just being dramatic for the sake of it.
Yeah.
They're making a point that's almost biological as much as it is economic. I mean, think about it. In nature, if you stop moving, you die.
True.
And the argument here is that economies are exactly the same. You don't just get to hit pause and, enjoy the status quo. You're either climbing or you're sliding backward.
That is a stressful thought to start with. I think most people, and I include myself here, we tend to think of the economy as this sort of background noise.
Mm-hmm.
The stock market goes up, it goes down, gas prices change, but life just sort of is. But today, we're really looking under the hood to see why life just is the way it is.
And specifically, we're digging into the mechanics of growth, not just, number go up growth, but the actual nuts and bolts of why you aren't currently subsistence farming for your dinner.
Which is a perfect segue because the source introduces a character to help us with this. His name is Sean.
Right.
And Sean's life sounds miserable.
Sean is our stand-in for, the average human experience for most of history, and the source uses this really specific, really powerful example to illustrate his life.
A loaf of bread.
The single loaf of bread.
Right. So when I want bread, I walk into a store, I tap my card, and I leave. It takes, maybe 3 minutes. And half of that is me waiting in line.
Exactly. But for Sean...
It's a different story.
For Sean, getting that bread is his entire morning. The source walks us through what it calls the old way. And this isn't just, popping something in an oven.
No.
It starts with a scythe. You're physically out in a field swinging this heavy blade to harvest wheat.
I've never swung a scythe, but I imagine it's not a low-impact workout.
Oh, it's backbreaking. You're burning thousands of calories. And then, after you harvest it, you're not even done. You still have to thresh it, winnow it, and then grind it by hand. The source estimates this whole process takes about half a day of labor.
Half a day?
For the raw materials.
So 4 to 6 hours of just hard physical work for one loaf of bread.
Correct. And this is where we have to talk about that buzzword, productivity. Because I think when a lot of our listeners hear that word, they tense up.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Productivity sounds like a consultant's about to come into your office, time your bathroom breaks, and tell you to answer emails faster.
Yes.
It just feels like code for work harder.
That's the corporate, the hustle culture corruption of the word.
Yeah.
But in the context of this deep dive, productivity is something much more, magical. It's not about sweating more. It's about the new way the source describes.
The combine harvester.
The combine harvester.
Right.
And the automatic oven. The source points out that today we have machines that can do that same half day of work Sean was doing. Harvesting, threshing, all of it. In literally seconds.
The math on that is just staggering. We're talking a reduction in effort of, 99.9%, something like that.
Easily. And that is the core insight. Productivity isn't about working harder. It's about getting more out while putting less in. It's the art of efficiency. But here's the real question. If we can make the bread in seconds instead of hours, what happens to Sean?
Oh, the old fear is Sean's out of a job, right?
That's the immediate fear. But if you look at the bigger picture, if Sean doesn't have to spend 6 hours swinging a scythe just to feed himself...
He has 6 hours of his life back.
It buys his life back.
Yeah.
Exactly. He can now use that time to build a better house, or weave cloth, or learn to read, or invent a better scythe, or honestly just rest. The magic of productivity is that it liberates human time.
We aren't trapped in that cycle.
Right. That cycle of just working to eat so you have the energy to work again.
So it makes the bread cheaper, not just in money, but in the currency of life and time.
Precisely. And that liberation of time is the bedrock of everything else we call civilization. You can't have philosophers or physicists if everyone is stuck in the wheat field.
So, okay, we've established that productivity, this magic of doing more with less, is the engine. But where does that engine take us? Because the source makes a really bold claim next. It says that economic growth is the only realistic way to defeat poverty.
It is a bold claim, especially in a world where we talk a lot about redistribution. But the source argues you can't distribute what you haven't produced. And to really drive this home, they use a comparison that I think is just It's really sticky.
The emperor.
It compares the average person today, so you, me, anyone listening, to an emperor from the 18th century.
I love this because on the surface, it sounds ridiculous. If you ask me, would you rather be you or the Emperor of France in 1750?
Oof.
I mean,
Yeah.
the emperor had palaces, servants, gold plates. It's hard to say no.
It is very hard to say no to the gold plates, but the source asks you to look closer, to look at the actual quality of the emperor's daily life. Let's just strip away the ceremony. What is his life actually like?
Well, for one thing, it's hot.
It's incredibly hot. It's 1750, summer in Versailles. There is no air conditioning. The source explicitly mentions climate control as a luxury the emperor could not buy with all the gold in France.
So he's just sweltering.
He's sweltering, surrounded by stagnant air and bugs.
Okay, so he's sweaty. I can deal with sweat if I'm rich. What else?
How about travel? If the emperor wants to visit Rome, we're talking weeks of being bounced around in a wooden carriage on unpaved, muddy roads.
Oh, that sounds awful.
It's physically punishing. Today, you hop on a flight, you're there in 2 hours sipping a ginger ale.
That's true. The mobility gap is just insane. But the big one, the one that really settles it for me, is medicine.
This is the clincher. The source reminds us the emperor lived in a world with no antibiotics, no anesthesia, no modern dentistry.
Ugh, the dentistry.
Just think about it. If the emperor gets an abscessed tooth, or a bacterial infection, or appendicitis, he is in the exact same boat as the poorest peasant in his kingdom.
He's going to suffer.
He's going to suffer, and he is very likely going to die. His wealth cannot save him from that.
That really puts it in perspective. Today, if I get an infection, I go to a clinic, I get a pill, and I'm fine in a few days. I have access to a miracle that he couldn't even dream of.
So this redefines what standard of living actually means. It's not just about being richer than your neighbor, it's about the absolute baseline of comfort and health. The source argues the floor for a middle-class person today is higher than the ceiling was for the absolute elite 3 centuries ago.
And that didn't happen because we found more gold. It happened because of that first thing we talked about, productivity.
Exactly.
We got so good at making things, medicine, travel, cooling, that they became cheap enough for everyone.
We democratized the luxuries of the emperor. That is what economic vitality actually looks like. It's the process of turning luxuries into necessities.
Okay, I am sold on the why. Being better off than an emperor is a good goal. But I want to talk about the how fast. Because it feels like sometimes the economy is roaring and sometimes it's just dragging. The source introduces a specific mathematical concept here, the rule of 72.
Yes. This is a classic back-of-the-napkin calculation in finance, but the source presents it in this little scene where Sean R. Farmer is showing a trick to another character, Annie.
I'm always a little wary of doing math on a podcast, but this one seems pretty simple.
It is shockingly simple. The rule of 72 tells you how long it takes for something to double in size based on its growth rate.
Okay.
The formula is just take the number 72 and divide it by your annual growth rate percentage. The answer is the number of years it takes to double.
Okay, let's test it. Let's say our economy is growing at 1% a year. Low, but it's positive.
Okay, so 72 divided by 1 is?
72.
So at 1% growth, it takes 72 years for the standard of living to double. That's basically an entire human lifespan.
So you might see things get twice as good by the time you die. It's barely noticeable year to year.
It feels like stagnation. It feels like nothing is changing. Now, let's use the example from the text. Let's crank that growth rate up to 3%.
Okay.
All right. 72 divided by 3.
It's 24.
24 years. Now, just pause on that for a second. The difference between 1% and 3%, it sounds like a rounding error on the news.
Yeah, it sounds trivial.
But in reality, 3% growth means the entire economy, the standard of living, doubles every 24 years.
That's a single generation.
That's a single generation. It means you could see your country become twice as wealthy by the time you're 25, and then 4 times as wealthy by the time you're 50.
Wow.
And 8 times as wealthy by the time you're 75.
Okay, when you stack it like that, 2 times, 4 times, 8 times, it's completely different than the slow, linear slog of that 1% world.
That's the power of compound growth. A society growing at 3% feels dynamic. It feels optimistic. A society growing at 1% feels zero-sum.
I see that.
It feels like if I want to get ahead, I have to take something from you because the pie just isn't getting bigger fast enough to matter.
It explains so much about political moods, too. When growth slows, people get grumpy, protective. When it's high, it feels like there's enough to go around.
It turns economics into a race against time. Can we double our prosperity fast enough for people to feel it in their own lives?
So speed matters a lot. But you can't just, turn a dial on a desk that says growth rate 3%.
Hmm?
You need fuel. And this brings us to the final, and I think most philosophical part of the source material, the discussion on resources.
This is my favorite part of the text because it really challenges a common anxiety. We hear all the time that we're running out of things.
Peak oil, yeah.
Peak oil, lithium, arable land. The source categorizes these as finite resources.
Which makes sense. There's only so much earth. We can't just, manufacture more land.
Correct. And if the economy was just about digging more holes to get more stuff, we would eventually hit a wall. Stagnation would be inevitable. But the source argues there's a second category.
Infinite resources.
Infinite resources. And what are those?
Ideas.
Technology.
Ideas, technology, instructions.
Okay, but isn't that a little abstract? I mean, ideas can't fuel my car.
Not directly.
Yeah.
But look at the mechanism the source describes. It uses this metaphor of digging holes. The finite mindset says, to get more, we must dig more holes.
Right.
The infinite mindset innovation says, wait, why are we digging holes at all? Maybe we can build a bridge instead.
I see. So it's not about doing the same thing harder. It's about changing the nature of the task.
Exactly. Let's use a real-world example. Think about whale oil. In the 19th century, we lit our homes with whale oil. Whales are a finite resource.
Very finite.
If we had kept growing simply by killing more whales, we would have killed them all, and then we would have sat in the dark.
We would have hit that wall. But we didn't. Why? Because someone had an idea. We found kerosene, then electricity, then light bulbs. Now we have LEDs. We get more light today for a tiny fraction of the energy cost, and we don't use whales at all.
That's a great way to put it. We didn't solve the whale oil crisis by finding more whales. We solved it by making the whale completely irrelevant.
That is the essence of innovation. It allows us to bypass physical limits. The source argues that while atoms are limited, the arrangements of those atoms are effectively infinite.
So there's always a smarter way.
There's always a smarter way to arrange them to get what we want.
So if we tie this all the way back to stagnation is death from the beginning, stagnation happens when we stop having those ideas.
That's it. Stagnation is when we stop building bridges and we go back to just fighting over who gets to dig the next hole.
It puts a lot of pressure on creativity. It basically says the whole economy runs on imagination.
It does. It runs on the belief that there's a better way to do things that just hasn't been discovered yet. And that brings us right back to Sean on the bread. The better way was the combine harvester. That freed Sean.
And the better way in medicine freed the modern person from an early death.
Right. And the math, the rule of 72, it just tells us how aggressive we're being with those ideas. Are we pushing hard enough to double our lives, or are we just coasting?
It really does create this cohesive picture. It's not just random forces. It's a machine, an architecture.
And a fragile one. That's the warning. If you stop the innovation, the whole thing grinds to a halt. You slide back toward the old way.
Well, we certainly covered a lot of ground. We went from wheat fields to Versailles and then to a math class. But I feel like I have a much better handle on why this all matters. It's not abstract. It's the difference between a hard life and a good life.
That really is it. Economics is just the study of how we make life less difficult.
Before we wrap up, I want to throw one last thought at you. Something that's been brewing since we talked about the infinite ideas. Go for it.
So we agreed that physical stuff, the resources, are finite, but ideas are infinite.
Right.
So if we look around the world and we see poverty or stagnation or an economy that's failing, does that mean it is never actually a resource problem?
That is a very provocative way to put it.
Isn't it? Because if the solution is always a new idea, a new bridge instead of a hole, then every economic crisis is actually just a crisis of imagination.
I think fundamentally this source would agree with you. If we're stuck, it's not because the earth ran out of copper or oil. It's because we ran out of the ingenuity to use what we have in a better way.
It's empowering, but it's also kind of terrifying. It means it's all on us. We can't blame the dirt.
We can't blame the dirt. We have to build the bridge.
Something for everyone to think about. Look around your own life, your own work. Where are you digging a hole? Just because that's how it's always been done. And where is the bridge hiding?
There's always a bridge. And thanks for diving deep with us today on the architecture of economic vitality. We hope you look at your toaster and your antibiotics with a little more respect tomorrow. We'll catch you on the next one.
Goodbye, everyone. Keep thinking.